The notification chimed on my phone just as I was shaking hands with the CEO of Automax Industries, sealing the biggest software contract of my career. 300 dealerships across the Midwest would now run on TechFlow's revolutionary inventory management system. I should have been celebrating, but the text message on my screen made my blood run cold. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya, we had to sell the house. Tyler's expansion into the Florida market didn't work out. We're losing everything. Sorry, sweetheart. Love, Mom. I excused myself from the Detroit conference room, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I stepped into the hallway. The house. Grandma Rose's house in Westfield. The Victorian she'd left to our family with the promise it would always be our sanctuary. The same house where she'd slipped me that envelope when I was 17, whispering that my college fund would be waiting when I needed it. The same fund my parents gave to Tyler 2 years later. My name is Maya Johnson, and at 28, I run TechFlow Innovations from our headquarters in downtown Chicago. We've revolutionized how car dealerships manage their operations, serving over 500 locations nationwide. Our software handles everything from customer relationship management to inventory tracking, and we've saved our clients millions in efficiency improvements. But 6 years ago, I was just the forgotten daughter in a family that only saw potential in one child. The call came while I was still processing the text. Mom's voice was shaky, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. Maya, honey, I know this is sudden, but we're in trouble. Johnson Automotive Solutions is hemorrhaging money, and the bank is foreclosing on everything. We have 2 weeks to get out of the house. Johnson Automotive Solutions, the family empire. My father built from a single Honda dealership into a chain of luxury car lots across New Jersey. BMW, Mercedes, Lexus. The business that was supposed to be Tyler's birthright, the one I was never smart enough to understand according to them. What about the emergency funds? I asked, though I already knew the answer. What about the business? Accounts? Tyler invested everything into the Florida expansion last year, she said quietly. 3 new locations in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando. The market research seemed solid, but the competition was fiercer than we anticipated. We're losing $50,000 a month just keeping the lights on down there. I closed my eyes, remembering Tyler's graduation party 4 years ago. He'd stood on the deck of that very house, champagne in hand, announcing his master plan to expand Johnson Automotive into the Southeast. Everyone had applauded. Dad had beamed with pride. Tyler was the golden boy, the business genius, the son who would take the family legacy national. Nobody had asked the daughter who'd been quietly studying automotive industry trends for her community college business classes. Nobody wanted to hear that Florida's luxury car market was oversaturated, that 3 established BMW dealerships in Miami alone would make breaking in nearly impossible. I was just Maya, the girl who'd taken the easy path of community college instead of a real university. The irony was suffocating. Here I was, having just closed a deal that would bring in more revenue than their entire dealership chain generated in a year, and they had no idea who I'd become. Mom, what about Tyler? Can he figure something out? There was a long pause. Tyler's been trying, sweetheart, but he's in over his head. The automotive industry has changed so much with all this computer technology, and he's struggling to keep up. He keeps talking about needing better software systems, but we can't afford the consultants who understand that stuff. The irony hit me like a physical blow. Tyler needed better software systems. I had built the most advanced automotive software platform in the country, and my own family had no idea it existed. 6 years ago, when I was 22 and desperate to start my computer science degree at Rutgers, I'd sat in Dad's office with my acceptance letter and financial aid documents. The state grants would cover most of my tuition, but I still needed $30,000 for the first year. Grandma Rose had left me a college fund worth $900,000, money she'd specifically earmarked for my education in her will. "Maya, we need to talk about your grandmother's money," Dad had said, not even looking up from his paperwork. "Tyler's been accepted to Wharton's MBA program. Full ride costs about $200,000, but the connections he'll make there will be invaluable for the business." "But Dad, that money is for my college," I'd protested. "Grandma Rose specifically said it was for my education." "Tyler's education will benefit the whole family," Mom had interjected. "He'll come back and modernize Johnson Automotive. Think of it as an investment in all our futures." "What about my future?" Dad had finally looked up then, his expression patient but condescending. "Maya, you're talking about community college computer classes. Tyler's talking about an MBA from one of the top business schools in the world. The math is simple." "Community. College is a perfectly respectable choice," Mom had added quickly. "And you can always work part-time at one of the dealerships to pay for it. Character building. They'd used my inheritance to fund Tyler's Wharton MBA, his luxury apartment in Philadelphia, and his spring break networking trips to Aspen. I'd worked 30 hours a week at a local electronics store while taking programming classes at Middlesex, County College, learning code in the back room during my lunch breaks. Tyler had graduated with honors, connections, and a job waiting for him as VP of Marketing at Johnson Automotive Solutions. I'd graduated with an associate's degree, student, loan debt, and a burning determination to prove them all wrong. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The first year after graduation was brutal. I moved to Chicago with $1,200 and a suitcase, sleeping on my college roommate's couch while working 3 different jobs. Customer service rep at a tech startup during the day, freelance, web design at night, and weekend shifts at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Every spare minute went into building my first software prototype. I'd noticed something during my brief stint working Tyler's promotional events at the dealerships. The inventory management systems were ancient, the customer databases were a mess, and the sales teams were drowning in paperwork that could be automated. These weren't complicated problems to solve if you understood both technology and the automotive sales process. My breakthrough came during a particularly difficult freelance project. A small used car lot in Wicker Park hired me to build them a simple website, but when I saw their operation, I knew I could do more. Their inventory tracking was done on spreadsheets, customer follow-ups were handled with sticky notes, and they had no way to analyze which marketing efforts actually brought in buyers. I spent 2 weeks building them a comprehensive management system, automated inventory updates, integrated customer relationship management, predictive analytics for sales forecasting, and marketing campaign tracking. Their monthly sales increased by 40% in the first quarter after implementation. Word spread quickly through Chicago's automotive community. Within 6 months, I had 12 clients and had hired my first employee, Alex Rodriguez, a brilliant programmer I'd met at a local tech meetup. Within a year, we'd incorporated as TechFlow Innovations and moved into our first real office space. The growth was exponential. We perfected our platform by working with small and medium-sized dealerships, learning exactly what they needed and how they operated. By year 3, we were handling inventory management for over 100 locations across the Midwest. By year 4, major dealership chains were reaching out to us. The beauty of our system wasn't just its technical sophistication, but its understanding of the automotive sales process. I'd grown up around car lots, even if my family never thought I was paying attention. I understood the seasonal fluctuations, the importance of trade-in valuations, the complexity of financing options, and the delicate dance between salespeople and customers. Tyler, despite his expensive MBA, had never bothered to understand these nuances. He focused on marketing campaigns and expansion strategies while the fundamental operations of the business remained stuck in the past. His Florida expansion had failed not just because of market competition, but because he'd tried to replicate New Jersey operations in a completely different regional market without adapting the systems or understanding local customer preferences. Meanwhile, TechFlow had quietly become the backbone of automotive retail operations across the country. Our software processed millions in vehicle sales every month, and our client retention rate was 97% because our system actually solved real problems instead of creating impressive-sounding initiatives. The personal cost of building this success was something I rarely allowed myself to think about. Missed family gatherings because I was debugging code. Skipped holidays because client implementations couldn't wait. Watched my college friends get married and start families while I poured everything into proving that the girl who wasn't worth a real college education could build something extraordinary. My parents had no idea what I'd accomplished. To them, I was still Maya who worked with computers somewhere in Chicago. They knew I had my own business, but they assumed it was something small, probably struggling like most startups they'd heard about. When they bothered to ask about my work, their eyes would glaze over as soon as I mentioned software development. Tyler, meanwhile, had been promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations last year. Dad had thrown him a celebration party at the country club, praising his vision and leadership. The Florida expansion was announced at that same party, with Tyler presenting market research and growth projections that looked impressive on paper, but ignored fundamental realities about regional market saturation and operational complexity. I hadn't been invited to the celebration. Family only, Mom had explained when I'd heard about it secondhand from my cousin. Apparently, Tyler's girlfriend qualified as family, but his sister, who'd been building her own business for 5 years, didn't make the guest list. Now, standing in that Detroit conference room hallway, I realized the bitter irony of the situation. Tyler's failed expansion was bankrupting Johnson Automotive Solutions because he'd never invested in the operational efficiency that could have made the new locations profitable. The same technological solutions that had made TechFlow successful could have saved his expansion if he'd bothered to ask his sister instead of assuming he knew better. But they were about to lose Grandma Rose's house, the house where she'd taught me to balance checkbooks at her kitchen table, where she'd encouraged my interest in computers when everyone else told me it was a phase. The house that held every good memory of my childhood, the ones from before my parents decided that only Tyler's dreams mattered. I looked at my phone screen again, staring at Mom's desperate text message. They were losing everything because they'd bet it all on Tyler's vision while ignoring the daughter who'd actually learned how to build something sustainable. The house would be sold to pay off debts from an expansion strategy that never should have happened. Some stranger would buy it, probably tear down Grandma Rose's garden and renovate away all the memories that made it home. Unless, of course, that stranger was someone who understood the true value of what they were selling. Someone who had the resources to buy it immediately, with cash, and who had very personal reasons for wanting to preserve every detail exactly as Grandma Rose had left it. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for my real estate attorney in Chicago. If Johnson Automotive Solutions was in foreclosure, the house sale would be handled through a bank auction or distressed property sale. With the right connections and timing, interested buyers could make offers quickly, often before the property ever hit the public market. As I dialed the number, I realized this wasn't just about saving a house. This was about everything that house represented. The little girl who'd been told she wasn't worth investing in. The young woman who'd been dismissed because her dreams didn't fit their vision of success. The daughter who'd built something extraordinary while they were busy celebrating mediocrity. They were about to discover exactly who Maya Johnson had become. And more importantly, they were about to learn the cost of underestimating the wrong person. The phone call with my real estate attorney, Jennifer Chen, lasted exactly 17 minutes and changed everything. Jennifer had connections throughout the New Jersey distressed property market, and within 2 hours, she'd identified the exact situation at Johnson Automotive Solutions. The foreclosure was being handled by First National Bank of New Jersey, and the family had exactly 11 days before the sheriff's sale. The property is listed at $850,000, But in foreclosure situations like this, cash offers significantly above asking get serious consideration, Jennifer explained. If you're genuinely interested, I can have an offer. Submitted by tomorrow morning. I stared out the window of my Chicago office, watching the evening traffic crawl along Lakeshore Drive. $850,000. 2 months ago, that would have been a significant portion of TechFlow's liquid assets. Today, after the AutoMax contract and 3 other major deals this quarter, it was barely a dent in our operating capital. Submit an offer for $1.2 million, I told Jennifer. Cash, 30-day close, no inspection contingencies. Maya, that's $400,000 over asking. Are you sure? I thought about Grandma Rose's garden, about the kitchen where she'd taught me to make her famous apple pie, about the attic room where I'd spent countless hours reading and dreaming about a future that seemed impossible back then. I'm sure. And Jennifer, I want the offer submitted anonymously through a shell company. The sellers shouldn't know who's buying it. The next morning brought 3 phone calls that painted a picture of a family in complete chaos. First, my cousin Rachel called from her apartment in Hoboken. Rachel had always been the family gossip, but today her voice carried genuine worry instead of her usual excitement about drama. Maya, I don't know if you've heard, but Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda are in serious trouble. Tyler's been calling everyone in the family asking for loans. He tried to borrow $50,000 from my parents yesterday. What did they say? Dad told him no, obviously. We don't have that kind of money, and honestly, Tyler's track record isn't exactly inspiring confidence. But Maya, it's bad. Tyler was crying on the phone. Actually crying. I've never heard him like that. Tyler crying. The golden boy who'd never faced a consequence in his life, who'd glided through childhood and young adulthood on a cushion of unearned confidence and family resources. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly overwhelmed by the memory of my own tears 6 years ago, when I'd realized I'd have to abandon my university dreams and start over at community college. The second call came from my Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister, who lived in Pennsylvania. Maya, honey, your father called me last night. He sounded desperate. They're going to lose everything, and he's scrambling to find buyers for parts of the business. What kinds of parts? Individual dealership locations, I think. He mentioned trying to sell the Mercedes location in Princeton separately from the BMW lot in Morristown. But apparently, the inventory management systems are so outdated that potential buyers are worried about taking on the operational headaches. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Dad was trying to sell dealerships, but the antiquated systems that Tyler had never bothered to modernize were scaring away buyers. Meanwhile, 20 miles away in my Chicago office, we had clients paying us 6-figure annual contracts specifically because our systems eliminated those exact operational headaches. The third call was the most revealing. Tyler himself called my cell phone at 11:30 that morning, something he hadn't done in over 2 years. Maya, it's Tyler. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. His voice was different. Gone was the casual confidence, the underlying assumption that his time was more valuable than mine. He sounded exhausted, uncertain, almost fragile. I'm between meetings, but I have a few minutes. What's going on? I'm sure Mom told you about the situation with the house and the business. Things are pretty rough right now. I heard about the Florida expansion not working out. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. It was a disaster, Maya. Complete disaster. I thought I understood the market down there, but I was wrong about everything. The customer demographics, the competition, the operational costs. We're bleeding. Money every single day, and I can't figure out how to stop it. This was unprecedented. Tyler admitting he was wrong, acknowledging failure, asking for help. 6 years ago, I would have felt victorious hearing this admission. Now, it just felt hollow. What about bringing in consultants to help with the operational efficiency? We can't afford consultants. And honestly, most of the firms I've talked to don't really understand the automotive retail business. They want to apply generic business solutions to problems that are pretty specific to car sales. The irony was staggering. Tyler was describing exactly the problem that TechFlow had been solving for hundreds of dealerships across the country. We'd built our entire business model around understanding the specific challenges of automotive retail, the seasonal fluctuations, the inventory, complexity, the customer relationship nuances that generic business software couldn't handle. Tyler, have you looked into specialized automotive software solutions? There are companies that focus specifically on dealership management. Yeah, I've researched some options, but they're all either too expensive or too generic. What we really need is something custom-built for our specific situation, but that kind of development would cost more than we have. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the absurd situation. My brother was describing exactly the service that my company provided, lamenting that he couldn't afford exactly the solution I'd spent 5 years perfecting. If he'd simply asked me for help 2 years ago, before the Florida expansion, TechFlow could have designed a system that would have made those new locations profitable instead of disastrous. But Tyler had never asked because Tyler had never considered that his sister might have something valuable to offer. In his mind, I was still the girl who'd settled for community college, who worked with computers in some vague, probably unsuccessful, way in Chicago. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, Tyler was still my brother, still the kid who'd taught me to ride a bike and shared his Halloween candy with me when we were young. "Maya, I have to ask you something, and I know it's a lot." Here it comes, I thought. The loan request. The desperate plea for financial help from the sister whose college fund he'd spent. "Do you think you could loan us some money? Not a huge amount, just enough to keep the Florida locations open for another few months while I figure out a turnaround strategy. Maybe 20 or 30,000. 20 or 30,000. Tyler thought that represented a significant loan request for me. He had no concept of TechFlow's financial position, no understanding that I could write a check for 10 times that amount without affecting our quarterly projections. "Tyler, I need to think about it. The timing is complicated with some business investments I have going on." "Of course I understand. And Maya, I know this is awkward given everything that happened with Grandma Rose's money. I want you to know that I think about that sometimes, and I wonder if things might have been different if we'd handled it another way." This was as close to an apology as Tyler had ever come, and part of me appreciated the acknowledgement. But it was 6 years too late, and several $100,000 short of meaningful restitution. "I'll let you know what I can do," I told him. After ending the call, I sat in my office chair staring at the Chicago skyline, processing the surreal nature of the situation. My family was facing financial ruin because they'd made decisions without considering that the daughter they'd dismissed might have valuable insights. Now they were about to lose their home to an anonymous buyer who happened to be that same dismissed daughter. Jennifer Chen called that afternoon with an update that made the situation even more complex. "Maya, your offer has been accepted." The bank was thrilled to get such a strong cash offer with no contingencies. But here's the interesting part. I spoke with the listing agent, and apparently, the family had no idea the house was even on the market yet. The bank moved forward with the foreclosure sale without giving them advance notice. What does that mean? It means your parents probably don't even know their house has been sold yet. The bank will notify them within the next few days. But as of right now, they're still hoping they can find a way to catch up on the mortgage payments. The ethical implications of the situation hit me like a physical weight. My parents were about to discover that their house had been sold out from under them, and they would have no idea that their own daughter was the buyer. They'd spend the next few weeks in a state of panic and grief, mourning the loss of their family home, while I held the power to resolve their crisis with a single phone call. But resolving their crisis would mean revealing my true financial position, which would lead to questions about TechFlow, which would eventually expose just how successful I'd become without their support or recognition. It would force a conversation that I wasn't sure I was ready to have. That evening, I drove to my apartment in Lincoln Park and opened a bottle of wine that I'd been saving for a special occasion. Closing the AutoMax deal should have felt like a celebration, but instead, I felt caught between victory and melancholy. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex Rodriguez, my business partner and closest friend at TechFlow. Saw the news about AutoMax in the industry newsletter. Congratulations, boss. This calls for a celebration. Drinks tomorrow? Alex was one of the few people who knew the full story of my family situation. He'd listened to me vent about being underestimated, supported me through the lonely early years of building TechFlow, and celebrated every milestone with genuine pride in what we'd accomplished together. I texted back, "Rain check on drinks. Family situation has gotten complicated." My phone rang immediately. "What kind of complicated?" Alex asked without preamble. "The kind where I just bought my parents' house at a foreclosure auction, and they don't know it yet." "Holy shit, Maya. Are you serious?" "Dead serious. They're about to lose everything because Tyler's expansion failed, and I just made an anonymous cash offer that the bank accepted. That's either the most generous thing you've ever done or the most elaborate revenge plot in history. I honestly don't know which one it is." Alex was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do when they find out the house has been sold?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them immediately and end their suffering. Part of me wants to let them experience what it feels like to lose something important because of other people's decisions. Maya, you're not a cruel person. You won't let them suffer indefinitely." "No, but maybe they need to understand what it feels like to have your future determined by someone else's priorities. Maybe they need to experience what I went through when they gave away my college fund." Just remember that revenge fantasies are more satisfying in theory than in practice. When you actually have the power to hurt people who hurt you, it doesn't always feel as good as you thought it would. Alex was right, of course. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel from buying their house was mixed with guilt, sadness, and a complex web of emotions that I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't a simple story of triumph over adversity. This was a family falling apart, and I was both the victim of their past decisions and the potential savior of their current crisis. Over the next 3 days, I watched the situation unfold, from a distance while trying to maintain focus on TechFlow's operations. We had 2 major client implementations starting the following week, and I couldn't let my personal drama interfere with our professional responsibilities. But it was impossible to ignore the increasingly desperate phone calls from family members. Tyler called twice more, his voice growing more strained each time. Mom left a voicemail asking if I could visit soon because they had some difficult news to share. Dad sent a text asking if I knew anything about selling a business quickly. The most heartbreaking call came from Mom on Thursday evening. She was crying before she even said hello. "Maya, honey, something terrible has happened. The bank sold our house. We just got the notification today. Some company called Mountain View Holdings bought it, and we have 30 days to move out." Mountain View Holdings, the shell company that Jennifer had created for the purchase. I'd named it after the view from Grandma Rose's kitchen window, which looked out over the rolling hills behind the house. "Mom, I'm so sorry. That's awful news. 27 years. In this house, Maya. 27 years of memories, and now some stranger owns it. They probably bought it as an investment property to flip. They'll tear down Grandma's garden and renovate everything she loved about this place." The pain in her voice was genuine and devastating. For all their flaws, my parents had built a life in that house. They'd raised Tyler and me there, celebrated holidays, weathered storms both literal and metaphorical. Losing it represented the collapse of everything they'd worked to build. "Have you talked to a lawyer about your options?" What options? We owe more on the mortgage than the house was worth before the foreclosure. The bank got their money from the sale and we got nothing. We're essentially homeless, Maya. At our age, starting over with nothing. The guilt was overwhelming. I had the power to fix this situation immediately, but doing so would require conversations that I'd been avoiding for 6 years. It would mean acknowledging the success I'd built, explaining why I'd never shared it with them, and confronting the fundamental dysfunction in our family relationships. Where will you go? We don't know yet. Maybe we can rent something small until we figure out our next steps. Tyler is talking about moving back in with us to save money, which makes sense but feels like such a step backward for everyone. Tyler moving back home. The golden boy returning to live with his parents while his sister owned a multi-million-dollar business an hour's drive away. The irony was so complete it felt almost scripted. Mom, what if you could stay in the house? What if the new owners were willing to work out some kind of arrangement? What do you mean? Maybe they'd be open to renting it back to you, or working out a lease-to-own situation. Some investors are interested in stable rental income rather than quick flips. Maya, we can't afford market rent on a house like this. And why would investors want to rent to a family that just went through foreclosure? Because the investor is your daughter who wants to make sure you're not homeless, I thought but didn't say. It might be worth exploring. Would you like me to make some inquiries? I have some business contacts in real estate who might be able to reach out to the new owners. Would you? Oh, Maya, that would mean everything to us. I know it's a long shot, but if there's any chance we could stay in this house, even as renters, it would feel like a miracle. After ending the call, I sat in my apartment feeling the full weight of the decision I needed to make. I could continue. The charade allowed Jennifer to approach them as a representative of Mountain View Holdings and offer them a reasonable rental agreement that would let them stay in their home while maintaining my anonymity. Or I could end the deception, reveal my identity as the buyer, and force a conversation that would change our family dynamics forever. Both options came with consequences I wasn't sure I was prepared to handle. But one thing was becoming clear. I couldn't maintain this secret indefinitely. The house purchase had been an impulsive decision driven by emotion and a desire to preserve something meaningful from my childhood. Now I needed to decide what kind of person I wanted to be with the power I'd accidentally acquired over my family's fate. The decision would have to wait one more day. Jennifer had scheduled a meeting for Friday afternoon to finalize the closing paperwork and discuss next steps. By this time tomorrow, I would legally own my childhood home, and my family would be counting down their final weeks as residents. Whatever happened next would define not just my relationship with my parents and Tyler, but my understanding of who I'd become after 6 years of building a life without their support or recognition. The decision crystallized during my Friday morning run along Lake Michigan. The autumn air was crisp, the lake was calm, and for the first time in days, my mind felt clear enough to think beyond the immediate crisis. As I rounded the curve near Oak Street Beach, I realized that maintaining the secret wasn't protecting anyone anymore. It was just prolonging everyone's suffering while I wrestled with my own complicated emotions about justice and forgiveness. I called Jennifer Chen before I'd even finished my cool-down stretches. I need to arrange a meeting with the Johnson family. Today, if possible. I want to reveal that I'm the buyer. Maya, are you sure about this? Once you tell them, there's no going back to anonymity. I'm sure. Can you set something up for this afternoon? By noon, Jennifer had arranged a meeting at her law office in Princeton for 3 o'clock. She'd told my parents only that the new owner wanted to discuss potential arrangements for them to remain in the house. They had no idea they were about to discover that Mountain View Holdings was a shell company for their daughter's real estate investment. I drove down from Chicago in my Tesla Model S, a purchase I'd made 6 months earlier when TechFlow's quarterly profits exceeded our projections by 40%. It was the kind of car I dreamed about during those late nights working multiple jobs while taking community college classes. Tyler had always driven luxury vehicles provided by the family business, but this was the first expensive car I'd ever owned with money I'd earned myself. The drive gave me 3 hours to rehearse what I was going to say, but every practice speech felt inadequate for the complexity of the situation. How do you explain to your parents that their daughter, whom they dismissed as a failure, had become successful enough to casually purchase their family home? How do you navigate the intersection of vindication and compassion when the people who hurt you are now genuinely suffering? Jennifer's office was in a converted Victorian house in downtown Princeton. All hardwood floors and tall windows that reminded me painfully of Grandma Rose's house. I arrived 15 minutes early and spent the time reviewing the closing documents and trying to calm my nerves. At exactly 3 o'clock, I heard familiar voices in the reception area. Mom's nervous laugh, Dad's gruff responses to the receptionist's pleasantries, and Tyler's voice, deeper and more strained than I remembered. Jennifer stepped out to greet them, and I heard her explain that the new owner preferred to handle the meeting personally rather than through representatives. "That's unusual," Dad said, "but we appreciate their willingness to consider letting us stay. We're prepared to be reasonable about rent and terms. I'm sure you'll find the owner very understanding of your situation," Jennifer replied. She led them down the hallway toward the conference room where I was waiting. I stood up and smoothed my navy blazer, the same one I'd worn to close the Automax deal. Through the glass wall, I could see them approaching. Tyler in an ill-fitting suit that had seen better days. Mom clutching a folder of what were probably financial documents. Dad walking with the stiff posture of a man trying to maintain dignity in an impossible situation. Jennifer opened the door and stepped aside. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, Tyler, I'd like you to meet the owner of Mountain View Holdings." They walked into the room expecting to meet a stranger, a businessman or investor, who might show them mercy in their desperate situation. Instead, they found their daughter sitting at the head of a mahogany conference table, every inch the successful executive they'd never imagined she could become. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Mom's folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the carpet. Dad's face went through a series of expressions, confusion shifting to recognition, shifting to something that might have been fear. Tyler just stared, his mouth slightly open as if he couldn't process what he was seeing. "Hello, Mom, Dad, Tyler." I kept my voice steady, professional. "Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." "Maya?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "You're Mountain View Holdings?" "I am. I bought the house on Wednesday for $1.2 million. Cash." Dad sank into the chair across from me, his face pale. "I don't understand. How do you have that kind of money? Your little computer business in Chicago." "My computer business," I said carefully, "is called TechFlow Innovations. We provide software solutions to automotive dealerships across the country. We have over 500 active clients and generate approximately $50 million in annual revenue." Tyler's chair creaked as he leaned back, the number hitting him like a physical blow. $50 million? This year will probably be closer to $60 million, actually. We just closed a contract with Automax Industries that will add 300 locations to our client base. The room fell silent again. I could see them trying to reconcile this information with their understanding of who I was supposed to be. The daughter who'd settled for community college, the girl who worked with computers in some vague, probably unsuccessful way. "Maya," Mom said slowly, "why didn't you tell us? Why didn't we know about any of this? When would I have told you? During the family gatherings I wasn't invited to? During the phone calls where you asked about my work and then changed the subject when I tried to explain what I do? Or maybe during Tyler's promotion celebration, the one that was family only but somehow didn't include me?" Dad found his voice. "That's not fair, Maya. We always supported your choices. You supported my choices by giving my college fund to Tyler and telling me to be realistic about my future. You supported me by dismissing my business as a little computer thing while celebrating Tyler's every mediocre achievement? Maya, we didn't know, Tyler said quietly. We had no idea you'd built something this successful. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed that because I didn't follow your prescribed path, I must have failed. It never occurred to any of you that maybe I'd found a different way to succeed. Mom was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the scattered papers on the floor. Oh my God, Maya, we've been such fools. The irony, I continued, my composure starting to crack, is that if you'd bothered to ask me about TechFlow 2 years ago, I could have told Tyler exactly why his Florida expansion would fail. Automotive retail software is what I do. Market analysis for dealership operations is literally my specialty. I could have saved you millions of dollars and years of struggle. Tyler's face crumpled. Maya, I'm so sorry. I should have asked for your help. I should have recognized that you might understand things I didn't. You should have recognized that your sister might be worth listening to, period. Success aside, you should have treated me like family instead of like an inconvenience. Dad straightened in his chair, some of his old authority returning. Maya, I understand you're angry, and maybe you have a right to be, but buying our house at foreclosure seems vindictive. If you wanted to help, why not just offer to help? Because offering to help would have required you to accept that I was capable of helping. Based on our family history, what are the odds you would have taken financial advice from your daughter who settled for community college? The question hung in the air, unanswerable because we all knew the truth. They would have dismissed my offer, just like they'd dismissed everything else about my life that didn't fit their expectations. So what happens now? Tyler asked. Are you going to evict us? Make us homeless to teach us a lesson? I looked at my brother, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. The golden boy facade had cracked completely, revealing someone who was genuinely scared and overwhelmed. The expansion failure hadn't just cost him money. It had shattered his confidence and forced him to confront his own limitations. I bought the house, I said slowly, because I couldn't bear the thought of strangers tearing down Grandma Rose's garden and renovating away all the memories that made it home. I bought it because that house represents the only unconditional love I ever received in this family, and I wanted to preserve that. Mom looked up from her tissues. What does that mean for us? It means you can stay. The house needs some updates and maintenance that you haven't been able to afford. I'll handle those improvements. You can live there rent-free while you figure out your next steps. Maya, Dad said, his voice rough with emotion, we can't accept charity from you. Not after everything. It's not charity, Dad. It's an investment. In family, in forgiveness, in the possibility that we can do better than we've done before. Tyler leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Maya, can I ask you something? The Florida dealerships, the ones that are bleeding? Money. Do you think there's any way to save them? I'd been expecting this question. Honestly, probably not in their current state. The market positioning was wrong from the start, and the operational systems are too outdated to compete effectively. But the locations might have value if they were completely restructured with modern management systems and different marketing approaches. Would you consider consulting on a turnaround strategy? I know I have no right to ask, but I'm desperate, and you clearly understand this business better than I do. This was the moment I'd been unconsciously waiting for. Tyler, finally acknowledging that his sister might have valuable expertise, finally asking for help instead of assuming he had all the answers. Tyler, I'll make you a deal. Close the Florida locations immediately and focus on stabilizing the New Jersey operations. TechFlow will provide our complete dealership management system to Johnson Automotive Solutions at cost, and I'll personally oversee the implementation. If we can get your existing locations profitable again, then we can talk about future expansion with proper market research and operational planning. You'd do that? After everything we've put you through? I'd do it because you're my family and because I don't want to see Johnson Automotive Solutions disappear. Dad built something meaningful, even if it hasn't been managed as well as it could have been. Dad was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Maya, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. Dad, we all made mistakes. The question is whether we can learn from them. I want to understand your business, he said. Really understand it. Would you be willing to show me what TechFlow does? Explain how you built it? I'd like that. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Maya, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. I know I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. What you've accomplished is extraordinary. Thank you, Mom. That means more than you know. Jennifer, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward with a stack of documents. I have the paperwork ready to formalize the arrangement. Maya will retain ownership of the house, and the Johnson family will have lifetime residency rights with no rental obligations. There are also documents here establishing TechFlow's consulting relationship with Johnson Automotive Solutions. As we signed the papers, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication? Yes. But also relief. The anger I'd carried for 6 years wasn't gone, but it felt less consuming. The need to prove myself to my family remained, but it was balanced now by their genuine recognition of what I'd achieved. Tyler stood up first, extending his hand to me across the table. Maya, I want you to know that I understand what you've done here today. You had every right to let us fail, and instead, you saved us. I won't forget that. I shook his hand, feeling like I was meeting my brother for the first time. Tyler, we're going to make Johnson Automotive Solutions successful again, but it's going to require listening to advice, making difficult changes, and accepting that there's always more to learn. I'm ready for that. I've learned more about my limitations in the past 6 months than I did in 4 years of business school. Dad came around the table and, to my surprise, pulled me into a hug. Maya, I'm sorry it took a crisis for me to see who you really are. I promise you, that's going to change. Mom joined the embrace, and for a moment, we were just a family. Again. Damaged, complicated, with years of hurt to work through, but still connected by something deeper than our mistakes. As we walked out of Jennifer's office together, Tyler fell into step beside me. Maya, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you happy? I mean, beyond the business success, are you fulfilled with the life you've built? I considered the question as we reached our cars. Was I happy? I'd achieved professional success beyond my wildest teenage dreams. I'd proven wrong every person who'd ever doubted my potential. I'd built something meaningful that helped thousands of people do their jobs better. But I'd also spent 6 years building walls between myself and the people who'd hurt me. I'd let anger and resentment drive me toward success while leaving me isolated from meaningful relationships. I'm proud of what I've built, I told Tyler. But I think happiness is going to require figuring out how to balance achievement with connection. I've been so focused on proving myself that I forgot to build a life that includes the people I care about. Even after what we put you through, you still care about us? Tyler, you're my family. I was angry at you, disappointed in you, hurt by you. But I never stopped loving you. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I want to earn that love. Back, Maya. I want to be the brother you deserve to have. You can start by being the brother I need now. Someone who listens, who supports my decisions even when they don't make sense to you, who sees me as an equal partner in this family instead of a problem to manage. I can do that. As I drove back to Chicago that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, hope for my family's future. Not the naive hope of childhood, but the mature hope of an adult who understands that relationships require work, Forgiveness requires choice, and love requires risk. The house was saved. The business could be saved. Whether our family could be truly healed remained to be seen, but for the first time in 6 years, it felt possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex Rodriguez. "How did the family meeting go?" I voice texted back while stopped at a red light. "Better than expected. Turns out revenge is less satisfying than reconciliation." "Does this mean you're not going to be a mysterious billionaire recluse anymore?" "I was never a billionaire, Alex. And I'm definitely not mysterious anymore. But you're still going to be my business partner and friend, right? Because TechFlow needs you and I need you. I'm not going anywhere. But I think it's time to expand our definition of success to include more than just quarterly profits." "What does that mean?" "It means we're going to help save a family business, preserve a childhood home, and maybe prove that the best revenge is helping the people who hurt you become better versions of themselves." "Maya." "Yeah? You're going to make me cry if you keep talking like that." "Good. It means you still have a heart underneath all that programmer cynicism." As I pulled into my apartment building's parking garage, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a different chapter, one where success wasn't measured only by proving other people wrong, but by the relationships I could build and the healing I could facilitate. Tomorrow, I would start working with Tyler to restructure Johnson Automotive Solutions. Next weekend, I would drive down to Westfield and walk through Grandma Rose's garden with my parents, sharing memories and planning improvements to the house. The girl who'd been told she wasn't worth a real college education had grown up to become a woman who could buy and gift family homes without affecting her quarterly budget. But more importantly, she'd learned that true power isn't about control or revenge. It's about the choice to use your resources in service of something larger than your own validation. The phone rang as I was walking to my apartment door. Mom's voice was warm and tentative. "Maya, honey, would you like to come to dinner on Sunday? I want to make your favorite pot roast, and Dad wants to hear all about TechFlow." "I'd love that, Mom." "And Maya, thank you for everything. Thank you for giving me the chance to come home." As I hung up the phone and unlocked my apartment door, I smiled. For the first time in 6 years, Sunday dinner with my family sounded like exactly where I wanted to be. 6 weeks after the revelation at Jennifer's office, I was standing in the main showroom of Johnson Automotive Solutions, watching Tyler conduct a staff meeting that would have been unimaginable just 2 months earlier. The transformation wasn't just in the numbers, though those were impressive enough. Monthly sales had increased by 43%. Customer satisfaction scores had jumped from 62% to 89%, and inventory turnover had improved so dramatically that we'd reduced carrying costs by nearly 30%. But the real change was in Tyler himself. Gone was the entitled golden boy who'd assumed success was his birthright. In his place stood a focused, methodical leader who'd learned to ask questions before making assumptions and to listen to his staff instead of simply giving orders. The new customer relationship management system has eliminated our follow-up delays completely, Tyler was explaining to the sales team. Every lead is now tracked from initial contact through final sale with automated reminders and personalized communication templates. But the technology is only as good as the information we put into it, which means every interaction with a customer needs to be documented accurately and completely. I watched from the back of the room as Tyler fielded questions from his staff, noting how he'd learned to admit when he didn't know something instead of bluffing his way through conversations. When Maria Santos, the senior sales manager, asked about integration with the financing software, Tyler looked directly at me. "Maya, would you mind explaining how the financing integration works? You understand the technical aspects better than I do." This was progress. 6 months ago, Tyler would have attempted to answer the question himself, even if he wasn't sure about the details, rather than acknowledge that his sister might have superior knowledge about anything related to the family business. I stepped, forward and spent 10 minutes walking through the financing integration, explaining how the TechFlow system could pre-qualify customers, calculate payment options in real time, and automatically generate all the necessary paperwork. The staff asked thoughtful questions, and I could see their genuine excitement about tools that would make their jobs significantly easier and more productive. After the meeting, Tyler and I walked through the service department, where the TechFlow implementation had produced even more dramatic improvements. Service scheduling was now automated, parts inventory was tracked in real time, and customer communication was streamlined through integrated text and email systems. "Maya, I need to ask you something," Tyler said as we stood watching the service. "Technicians work with tablets instead of paper clipboards. When you designed this system, did you always know it could transform operations this completely? Or are you surprised by how well it's working?" I knew it would make a significant difference because I'd seen the results with our other clients. But honestly, the implementation here has exceeded my expectations because your staff embraced the changes so completely. A lot of times, we encounter resistance from employees who are comfortable with old systems. Why do you think our implementation went so smoothly? I considered the question carefully. Because you led by example. You learned every aspect of the system yourself before asking anyone else to change their workflow. You made it clear that this wasn't just another management initiative that would be abandoned in 6 months. Your staff trusted the changes because they trusted your commitment to making them work. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. I had to learn the system completely because I couldn't afford to fail again. The Florida expansion taught me that confidence without competence is just arrogance in disguise. We continued walking through the dealership, and I found myself seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just the family business where I'd once felt excluded and undervalued. It was becoming something that we were building together, a place where my expertise was not just acknowledged, but actively sought out. Tyler, I've been thinking about the conversation we had with Dad last week about expanding to Pennsylvania. What are your thoughts? I think the market research looks solid, but I want to make sure we're not repeating the mistakes of the Florida expansion. Before we commit to any new locations, I'd like to spend some time analyzing the competitive landscape and customer demographics in more detail. That makes sense. Would you be willing to take the lead on that analysis? I trust your judgment on market evaluation more than my own at this point. This admission would have been impossible for Tyler to make 6 months earlier. His entire identity had been built around being the business expert in the family, the one with the prestigious MBA and the natural instincts for market expansion. Acknowledging that his sister had superior analytical skills required a fundamental shift in how he saw both of us. I'd be happy to handle the market analysis. But Tyler, I want you to be involved in every step of the process. This isn't about me taking over decision-making. It's about us working together to make better decisions than either of us would make alone. I'd like that. I'm still learning to collaborate instead of competing, but I'm getting better at it. That afternoon, I drove to the house in Westfield to have lunch with Mom and discuss the renovations that were underway. The improvements weren't just cosmetic. We were updating the electrical system, modernizing the kitchen while preserving its vintage charm and adding a home office in the sunroom where I could work during my increasingly frequent visits. Mom had prepared my favorite sandwich, grilled cheese with tomato soup, the same meal she'd made for me countless times during childhood when I was sick or sad or just needed comfort food. But today felt different because we were eating as adults, who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, not as parent and child fulfilling obligatory roles. Maya, I need to tell you about a conversation I had with your father last night, Mom said as we sat at the kitchen table. He's been carrying around a lot of guilt about the college fund situation, and he wants to find a way to make amends financially. Mom, the money isn't important anymore. What matters is that we've found a way to move forward as a family. I know you feel that way, sweetheart, but your father needs to feel like he's addressed the financial injustice. He's been calculating how much that $900,000 would be worth today with interest and investment growth. I almost laughed at the irony. Dad was trying to calculate the investment value of money that I'd essentially multiplied by 50 through building TechFlow. What kind of restitution is he thinking about? He wants to give you his shares in Johnson Automotive Solutions, all of them. He says the business should belong to the person who saved it, not the person who nearly destroyed it. This proposal caught me completely off guard. I'd been thinking about our family reconciliation in terms of improved relationships and collaborative business decisions. I hadn't considered the possibility of actually owning the company that had once represented everything I was excluded from. Mom, I don't want Dad to give up his ownership in the business he built. That doesn't feel right. Maya, he's not giving up the business. He's giving it to someone he trusts to run it properly. There's a difference. What does Tyler think about this idea? Tyler suggested it. He said that you've proven you understand the automotive business better than anyone in the family, and that the company would be more successful under your leadership than under his. I sat quietly for a moment, processing the implications of this conversation. 6 months ago, I'd been the daughter whose business aspirations were dismissed as unrealistic. Now I was being offered control of the family enterprise by the same brother who'd once competed with me for parental approval. Mom, if Dad is serious about this, I'd want to structure it as a partnership rather than a transfer of ownership. Tyler has earned his place in the company leadership, and Dad has earned the right to retire with dignity and financial security. What kind of partnership are you thinking about? Equal three-way ownership between Dad, Tyler, and me. Dad transitions to Chairman Emeritus, Tyler remains as President of Operations, and I take on the role of CEO with strategic oversight. Everyone has skin in the game, and everyone has a voice in major decisions. Mom smiled, the expression reaching. Her eyes in a way that reminded me of happier moments from childhood. Maya, you've grown into such a wise woman. I'm not sure I would have been mature enough to propose that kind of generous arrangement if I'd been in your position. Mom, revenge isn't the point anymore. Building something sustainable that we can all be proud of is the point. Later, that afternoon, Tyler arrived with Dad, and we sat around the same dining room table where I'd once struggled with homework while listening to conversations about Tyler's achievements. But now we were 3 adults discussing business strategy and family legacy with mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's perspectives. Maya, Dad began, I've been thinking a lot about how to address the financial wrong we did to you with the college fund. Tyler and I have discussed transferring ownership of Johnson Automotive Solutions to you as a form of restitution. Dad, I appreciate the gesture, but I have a different proposal. Instead of transferring ownership, let's restructure the company. As an equal partnership between the 3 of us. You built something valuable, Tyler has learned to manage it effectively, and I can contribute strategic oversight and technological expertise. Tyler leaned forward with obvious interest. What would that look like practically? Dad becomes Chairman Emeritus with full retirement benefits and continued input on major decisions. Tyler remains President of Operations with day-to-day management responsibility. I take on the role of CEO with oversight of strategic planning, technology implementation, and expansion decisions. Dad was quiet for a long moment, considering the proposal. Maya, that's more generous than you need to be. You could run this company more successfully than Tyler or I ever have. Maybe, but I don't want to run it alone. I've spent 6 years building TechFlow by myself, and while that was necessary at the time, I've learned that collaboration produces better results than individual achievement. What about TechFlow? Tyler asked. How would you balance running 2 companies? TechFlow has a strong management team in place, and Alex Rodriguez is ready to take on more executive responsibility. I'd remain as board chair and major shareholder, but I could delegate day-to-day operations while focusing more attention on Johnson Automotive. We spent the next 2 hours working through the details of the partnership structure, discussing everything from profit sharing to decision-making processes to long-term expansion plans. The conversation felt like the business collaboration I'd always imagined we might have if we'd been able to see each other clearly. "There's one more thing I want to discuss," I said as we were finalizing the partnership terms. "I think we should rename the company to reflect its new direction." "What kind of name are you thinking about?" Dad asked. "Johnson Family Automotive. It acknowledges our heritage while emphasizing that this is a family enterprise built on collaboration rather than individual achievement." Tyler smiled broadly. "I like that. It feels like a fresh start while honoring what Dad built originally." Over the following weeks, the transformation of our family dynamics accelerated in ways that surprised all of us. Tyler and I began meeting twice a week to discuss business strategy, and these sessions evolved into genuine brainstorming partnerships where we challenged each other's ideas and built on each other's insights. Dad started spending more time at the dealerships, not as a manager trying to control operations, but as a mentor sharing decades of industry knowledge with younger staff members. His institutional memory of customer preferences, seasonal patterns, and supplier relationships proved invaluable for optimizing our TechFlow implementation. Mom became an unofficial company historian, documenting the family business story and creating marketing materials that emphasized our 3-generation commitment to customer service and community involvement. Her natural warmth and communication skills made her an effective spokesperson for the company's values and mission. But the most significant change was in how we talked to each other. Family dinners became business strategy sessions, but they were also genuine conversations where we listened to each other's perspectives and built on each other's ideas. Tyler asked thoughtful questions about technology implementation. Dad shared insights about long-term customer relationship management. Mom contributed ideas about marketing and community engagement. I found myself looking forward to these family interactions in ways I hadn't since childhood. Not because the past hurts had been erased, but because we'd learned to create new patterns of engagement that acknowledged our individual strengths while supporting our collective goals. The first major test of our new partnership came when a competitor, Platinum Auto Group, approached us about a potential acquisition. They were a larger dealership chain based in Philadelphia, and their initial offer was substantial enough to represent a complete exit strategy for our family. $28 million, Tyler said, reading through the acquisition proposal. They want to buy all 3 locations and retain most of our staff. "What's your gut reaction?" I asked. 6 months ago, I would have been tempted to take the money and walk away. But now, I think we're just getting started with what Johnson Family Automotive could become. Dad nodded in agreement. "I spent 30 years building this business. I'm not ready to sell it to strangers who might not maintain the customer relationships and community connections we've developed. Plus," I added, "our operational improvements over the past few months have positioned us for sustainable growth. Selling now would mean giving up the upside potential of everything we've implemented." We declined the acquisition offer, but the process clarified our shared vision for the company's future. We weren't just running a family business. We were building a legacy that could compete with larger operators while maintaining the personal, service, and community focus that differentiated us in the market. The decision to reject the buyout offer also marked a turning point in how the automotive industry viewed Johnson Family Automotive. Word spread quickly that we'd turned down a substantial acquisition offer, which signaled to competitors, suppliers, and potential employees that we were committed to long-term growth rather than short-term profit maximization. Within a month, we received inquiries from 3 high-quality candidates for management positions, 2 supplier partnership proposals that offered better terms than our existing arrangements, and an invitation to join the Metropolitan Auto Dealers Association Board of Directors. "Maya," Tyler said during one of our weekly strategy meetings, "I need to ask you something personal. Are you happy with how things have worked out between us?" The question caught me off guard, partly because it was so direct and partly because I hadn't taken time to reflect on my own emotional journey through our family reconciliation. "I'm happier than I expected to be," I said, after considering the question carefully. 6 months ago, I thought vindication would feel like proving you all wrong. Instead, it feels like building something together that none of us could have created alone. Do you ever regret buying the house? Do you wish you'd handled the situation differently? I regret that it took a crisis for us to have honest conversations about our family dynamics. But I don't regret the house purchase. It forced all of us to confront issues we'd been avoiding for years. Maya, I want you to know that I understand what you did for us. You had every right to let us fail, and instead, you chose to help us succeed. That's not just business wisdom. That's grace. Tyler, we're family. Despite everything that happened between us, we're still family. That has to mean something, or what's the point of any of this? Our conversation was interrupted by a phone call from Alex Rodriguez in Chicago. TechFlow had received an acquisition inquiry from a major software corporation, and Alex wanted to discuss the strategic implications with me. Maya, they're offering $400 million for full acquisition, or $200 million for a controlling stake that would let you retain operational control, Alex explained. $400 million. The number was staggering, representing a level of financial success that would have been unimaginable when I was working 3 jobs to pay for community college classes. Alex, what's your recommendation? Honestly, I think we should consider the partial acquisition. It would give us access to their distribution network and development resources while preserving the company culture and client relationships we've built. Let me think about it and talk to some people. Can you send me the full proposal? After ending the call, I sat in my office at Johnson Family Automotive, staring out the window at the service bays where Tyler was talking to one of our technicians about a customer's vehicle. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, I'd been running a successful but relatively small software company while my family struggled with a failing business. Now TechFlow was receiving acquisition offers that would make me one of the wealthiest people in New Jersey, while Johnson Family Automotive was positioned for sustainable growth and expansion. But more than the financial success, what struck me was the satisfaction of seeing Tyler engaged in the day-to-day operations of a business he was learning to run effectively. The golden boy who'd once assumed success was his birthright had evolved into a competent manager who understood that sustainable achievement required continuous learning and genuine respect for the people who made the business successful. That evening, I drove to the house in Westfield for dinner with my parents. Mom had prepared pot roast, Dad's favorite, and the smell filled the kitchen with the kind of warmth that reminded me of the best moments from childhood. "Maya, sweetheart, you seem preoccupied tonight," Mom observed as we sat down to eat. "Is everything all right?" I told them about the TechFlow acquisition offer, explaining the financial implications and the strategic decisions I needed to make. Dad listened with the kind of focused attention he'd never shown when I tried to explain my business in the past. "Maya, that's an extraordinary offer," he said. "What are you leaning toward?" "I'm inclined to accept the partial acquisition. It would provide financial security while preserving operational control of the company I built." "What would that mean for your involvement with Johnson Family Automotive?" "It would actually give me more flexibility to focus on our family business. The acquiring company would handle TechFlow's day-to-day operations, which would free up time for me to concentrate on strategic planning and expansion for Johnson Family Automotive." Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Maya, I want you to know how proud I am of the choices you're making. You could take the full acquisition offer and retire at 28 years old, but instead, you're choosing to remain engaged with work that matters to you and family that matters to you." Mom, financial security has never been the primary goal. Building something meaningful has always been more important to me than just accumulating wealth. That's exactly what your grandmother would have said. She always valued contribution over accumulation. After dinner, Dad and I walked through Grandma Rose's garden, which was thriving under the new irrigation system and expanded plantings. The autumn colors were spectacular, and the evening light cast everything in golden tones that made the space feel almost magical. "Maya, I need to say something that I should have said years ago," Dad began as we stopped near the rose bushes. That had been Grandma Rose's pride and joy. "I was wrong about your potential. I was wrong about your choices. And I was wrong about what success looks like. Dad, we were all learning. I made mistakes too." "Maybe, but your mistakes didn't hurt other people the way mine did. I let my assumptions about traditional success paths blind me to the extraordinary things you were accomplishing. What matters is that we can see each other clearly now. Maya, I want you to know that I see you clearly now, and what I see is remarkable. You built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You saved our family business when you had every reason to let it fail. You've handled success with grace and generosity that I'm not sure I would have managed at your age. Dad, grace and generosity are easier when you're in a position of strength. The real test is how people behave when they're vulnerable or desperate. Is that why you helped us? Because you wanted to be the kind of person who helps family even when they don't deserve it?" I considered his question as we continued walking through the garden. "I helped because letting you fail wouldn't have changed anything that happened to me in the past. But helping you succeed might change what happens to all of us in the future." "And has it? Changed what happens to us in the future?" "Dad, 6 months ago, I was successful but isolated. I'd built something impressive, but I'd built it alone, and I was proud but not particularly happy. Now I'm successful and connected. I'm building something impressive with people I care about, and I'm both proud and happy. Maya, that's the kind of success that actually matters." The following week brought a flurry of activity as I worked to finalize both the TechFlow acquisition and the partnership restructuring at Johnson Family Automotive. The legal complexity of managing both transactions simultaneously required coordination between Jennifer Chen, Alex Rodriguez, and our new business attorney, David Kim, who specialized in family business structures. The TechFlow partial acquisition moved forward smoothly, with the acquiring company, Digital Solutions International, offering terms that exceeded our expectations. They would pay $220 million for 60% ownership, with Alex and me retaining control of operations and maintaining our company culture and client relationships. The Johnson Family Automotive Partnership restructuring required more delicate negotiation, not because of disagreement between family members, but because we wanted to ensure that the legal structure supported our collaborative decision-making process while protecting everyone's financial interests. The partnership agreement needs to address succession planning, dispute resolution, and exit strategies, David Kim explained during our family meeting. Even though you're all working together effectively now, the legal structure should anticipate potential future complications. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. What kind of complications should we be prepared for? Disagreements about expansion timing, capital allocation, or strategic direction. Changes in family circumstances that might affect someone's ability to remain actively involved. Market conditions that might make selling the business attractive to some partners, but not others. We spent several hours working through scenarios and establishing protocols for handling various situations that might arise. The process wasn't just about legal protection. It was about building a framework that would support our family relationships, even if business disagreements developed. "I want to add one provision that might be unusual," I said as we were finalizing the partnership terms. "If at any point Tyler or Dad feels that my involvement is limiting their autonomy or creating family tension, they can invoke a buyout clause that allows them to purchase my shares at fair market value." "Maya, why would you want that kind of provision?" Dad asked. Because I never want my participation in the family business to feel like an obligation or a burden. If circumstances change and my involvement becomes problematic, there should be a graceful exit strategy that preserves our personal relationships. Tyler shook his head. Maya, that's not going to be necessary. We're better together than any of us would be separately. I hope you're right, but having the option available removes pressure from all of us to make the business partnership work at the expense of our family relationships. The partnership agreement was finalized 2 weeks later, and we celebrated with a dinner at the Westfield Country Club that felt like a genuine family milestone. Tyler brought his girlfriend Jessica, who had started working part-time on marketing projects for Johnson Family Automotive. Mom invited her sister Patricia and her husband, who'd driven down from Pennsylvania to celebrate with us. Dad stood up to make a toast that captured the significance of the moment better than I could have anticipated. 6 months ago, I thought I was going to lose everything I'd spent 30 years building. I was ready to accept that my legacy was failure, that I'd let down my family and employees and everyone who'd trusted me to build something lasting. He paused, looking at each of us around the table. What I didn't realize was that my real legacy was already secure. It was sitting at this table in the form of children who'd grown into adults I could be proud of and learn from. Maya, he continued, you saved more than our business. You saved our family. But more than that, you showed us what grace looks like when you have the power to hurt people who hurt you, and you choose to heal instead. Tyler, you've learned to lead with humility instead of arrogance, to ask questions instead of assuming you have answers, and to build success through collaboration instead of competition. Linda, he said, turning to Mom, you've helped all of us remember that business success is meaningless if it doesn't strengthen the relationships that matter most. The toast was followed by stories, laughter, and the kind of easy conversation that I'd forgotten was possible with my family. Jessica shared ideas about digital marketing strategies for the automotive industry. Patricia asked thoughtful questions about the challenges of running family businesses. Tyler and I found ourselves finishing each other's sentences when discussing expansion plans. But the moment that meant the most to me came near the end of the evening, when Tyler pulled me aside for a private conversation. Maya, I need to tell you something that I've been thinking about for weeks, he said, as we stepped onto the club's terrace overlooking the golf course. What's on your mind? I've been trying to figure out how to apologize for 6 years of treating you like you didn't matter. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I need you to know that I understand what I did wrong. Tyler, we've moved past the apologies. What matters now is how we treat each other going forward. I know, but I need to say this for my own peace of mind. I was threatened by your intelligence and your independence, so I dismissed your achievements to make myself feel better about my own limitations. I participated in family dynamics that marginalized you because keeping you small made me feel bigger. Tyler, I appreciate the honesty, but you don't need to punish yourself for past mistakes. I'm not punishing myself. I'm acknowledging the truth so that I can make sure I never repeat those patterns. Maya, you're the smartest person in our family, and probably the most capable business person I've ever met. I want to make sure I'm supporting your success instead of competing with it. Tyler, you've already made that shift. The way you've embraced the TechFlow implementation, the way you've asked for my input on strategic decisions, the way you've made sure I'm included in family celebrations, it all demonstrates that you see me differently now. I do see you differently. I see you clearly. And what I see is someone I want to learn from and work with and be proud to call my sister. The following month brought the official launch of Johnson Family Automotive's rebranding campaign, which Mom had developed with input from Jessica and approval from Tyler and me. The campaign emphasized our 3-generation commitment to customer service, our investment in cutting-edge technology, and our deep roots in the local community. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Local media covered our story as an example of successful family business evolution. Industry publications highlighted our operational improvements and technological innovations. Most importantly, customer traffic increased significantly as word spread about our enhanced service capabilities and modernized facilities. But the real measure of our success wasn't in the numbers, though those continued to improve month after month. It was in the satisfaction of building something together that none of us could have created individually. Tyler had evolved into a confident, competent leader who understood that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. Dad had found a meaningful role as mentor and advisor without feeling like he was losing control of the business he'd built. Mom had discovered marketing and communication talents that she'd never had the opportunity to develop during her years as a traditional homemaker. And I had learned that professional success felt hollow if it wasn't connected to meaningful relationships and shared purpose. The TechFlow acquisition had been completed successfully, with Digital Solutions International providing the resources and distribution network we needed to scale our operations nationally while preserving the company culture and client relationships that had made us successful. Alex Rodriguez had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, and he was thriving in his expanded role. But increasingly, I found myself spending more time in New Jersey than in Chicago, working from the home office we'd created in the sunroom at Westfield, and collaborating with Tyler on Johnson Family Automotive's strategic planning. Maya, Tyler said during one of our weekly planning meetings, I've been thinking about our conversation last month regarding Pennsylvania expansion. I think we're ready to move forward with the market analysis. What's changed your mind about the timeline? Our operational metrics have been consistent for 3 months now. Customer satisfaction is stable above 85%. Staff turnover has decreased to almost zero, and our profit margins are healthy enough to support expansion financing. Those are good indicators. What markets in Pennsylvania are you most interested in exploring? I'd like to look at the Lehigh Valley and the Harrisburg area. Both markets have demographic profiles that match our customer base, and neither market appears to be oversaturated with luxury dealerships. We spent the next 2 hours developing a comprehensive market analysis plan that would evaluate everything from competitor positioning to customer demographics to real estate availability. The conversation felt like genuine strategic collaboration between partners who respected each other's expertise and judgment. Tyler, I want to make sure we're not rushing into expansion just because we can afford it now. The Florida experience taught us that market analysis on paper doesn't always translate to operational success. Agreed. What kind of validation process would you recommend? Before we commit to any new locations, I'd like us to spend time in the target markets, talking to potential customers, visiting competitor locations, and understanding the local business environment. Market research is valuable, but there's no substitute for first-hand experience. That makes sense. Would you be willing to take the lead on the field research? I think your analytical approach would be more thorough than mine. I'd be happy to handle the field research, but I want you involved in every step of the process. This isn't about me making decisions for you. It's about us making better decisions together. Maya, I want you to know how much I appreciate your approach to our partnership. You could easily take over all the strategic planning and leave me to handle day-to-day operations. Instead, you're insisting that I remain engaged in every major decision. Tyler, you understand the automotive industry and customer relationships in ways that I'm still learning. My analytical skills are valuable, but they're most effective when they're combined with your operational knowledge and customer insights. The Pennsylvania market research took 6 weeks and involved visiting 17 potential locations across 4 metropolitan areas. Tyler and I traveled together, spending our days visiting competitor dealerships, interviewing local business leaders, and evaluating real estate options. The field research confirmed our initial market analysis while revealing several insights that hadn't been apparent from demographic data alone. The Lehigh Valley market was more competitive than we'd Anticipated, with 2 established luxury dealerships already serving the customer base we'd hoped to attract. The Harrisburg area, however, offered opportunities that exceeded our expectations. "Maya, I think we found our expansion market," Tyler said as we finished our final day of research in Harrisburg. The demographic data was accurate, but the competitive landscape is even more favorable than we thought. I agree. The established dealerships in this market are using outdated sales processes and technology systems. We could differentiate ourselves significantly just by implementing the TechFlow systems we're already using in New Jersey. Plus, the real estate options are better than anything we saw in the Lehigh Valley. That location on Route 322 would give us excellent visibility and easy highway access. We spent the drive back to New Jersey developing a preliminary business plan for the Harrisburg expansion, including timeline, staffing requirements, and financial projections. The conversation felt natural and productive, like we'd been business partners for years instead of months. "Tyler, I want to run something by you," I said as we approached the New Jersey border. "What would you think about making the Pennsylvania expansion a test case for a different kind of family business model?" "What do you mean?" "Instead of owning and operating the new location directly, what if we developed a franchise model that could be replicated by other family businesses? We provide the technology systems, operational training, and ongoing support, while local entrepreneurs handle day-to-day management." Tyler considered the proposal carefully. "That's an interesting idea. It would allow us to expand our market presence without taking on all the operational complexity of managing multiple locations." "Exactly. And it would create opportunities for other families to build successful automotive businesses using proven systems and support structures." "Maya, that's not just business expansion. That's creating a platform for other people to achieve success, which feels more meaningful to me than just accumulating additional dealership locations." "I like it. It's ambitious, but manageable, profitable, but purposeful." We presented the franchise concept to Dad and Mom that evening over dinner at the house in Westfield. Dad's response was immediately enthusiastic, while Mom asked thoughtful questions about quality control and brand management. "Maya, this franchise concept reminds me of how you approached saving our family business," Dad observed. "You didn't just solve our immediate problems. You created systems and structures that could prevent similar problems in the future." "Dad, I've learned that sustainable success requires building platforms that support other people's achievements, not just accumulating individual accomplishments." That's a mature perspective for someone your age. I learned it from watching what happened to our family when we focused too much on individual achievement and not enough on mutual support. Mom leaned forward with obvious interest. "Maya, if we develop this franchise model, how would we ensure that franchise owners maintain the customer service standards and community engagement that differentiate Johnson Family Automotive?" "That's a great question, Mom. I think we'd need to develop comprehensive training programs, ongoing support systems, and regular evaluation processes. But ultimately, we'd need to select franchise partners who share our values and commitment to excellence." "What kind of people would make good franchise partners?" Tyler asked. "Families or business partnerships that want to build something lasting in their communities. People who understand that customer relationships are more valuable than short-term profits. Entrepreneurs who are willing to invest in technology and training to deliver superior service." We spent the rest of the evening developing the franchise concept in more detail, discussing everything from initial investment requirements to ongoing royalty structures to quality assurance protocols. The conversation felt like the kind of strategic planning session that might happen at a major corporation, but with the personal investment and emotional engagement that only comes from family collaboration. Over the following weeks, the franchise concept evolved from an interesting idea to a concrete business plan. We engaged consultants to help with legal structure and operational protocols. We developed financial models that would make franchise ownership attractive while ensuring adequate returns for Johnson Family Automotive. We created training curricula that would prepare franchise partners to implement our systems and maintain our service standards. But the most important development was the recognition that we were building something larger than a successful family business. We were creating a model for how families could work together to achieve financial success while strengthening rather than undermining their personal relationships. "Maya," Tyler said during one of our planning sessions, "I keep thinking about how different our family dynamic is now compared to 6 months ago. Do you think other families could achieve similar transformations? I think any family can improve their relationships if they're willing to have honest conversations about past hurts and commit to creating better patterns going forward. But do you think our business collaboration model could work for other families? Maybe. If family members are willing to acknowledge each other's strengths, share decision-making authority, and prioritize collective success over individual recognition." "Ma, that seems like a lot of prerequisites." "Tyler, meaningful change is always difficult, but the alternative is accepting dysfunction as permanent, which isn't really an alternative at all." The Johnson Family Automotive Franchise Program launched 6 months later with 3 pilot locations in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. Each franchise was owned and operated by family partnerships that had demonstrated financial capability, operational competence, and commitment to customer service excellence. The results exceeded our most optimistic projections. All 3 locations achieved profitability within their first year of operation. Customer satisfaction scores averaged above 90% across all locations. Franchise owner satisfaction was high, with all 3 partnerships expressing interest in opening additional locations. But the success that meant the most to me wasn't measured in financial metrics. It was seeing Tyler confidently leading franchise training sessions, watching Dad mentor new franchise owners with decades of industry wisdom, and observing Mom develop marketing materials that helped franchise locations build strong community connections. The girl who'd felt excluded from family celebrations was now working with her family to create opportunities for other families to build successful businesses together. The daughter who'd been told she wasn't worth a real college education was now leading a company that helped other people achieve financial security and professional satisfaction. During our first annual franchise conference, held at a resort in the Pocono Mountains, I stood before an audience of 43 franchise owners and their families, looking out at faces that reflected the same determination and hope that had driven me to build TechFlow from nothing. "When we started Johnson Family Automotive's franchise program," I began, "we weren't just creating a business expansion strategy. We were testing a theory about whether families could work together to achieve success without sacrificing their relationships." The audience included couples who'd invested their life savings in franchise locations, parents who were working with adult children to build automotive businesses, and siblings who decided to combine their resources and expertise to create something neither could have accomplished alone. What we've learned over the past year is that family businesses succeed when everyone feels valued, everyone's expertise is respected, and everyone shares in both the challenges and the rewards of building something meaningful. After my presentation, I was approached by Maria and Carlos Hernandez, who owned our Virginia franchise location. Their story reminded me of my own journey, though their path had been different. "Ms. Johnson," Maria said, "my husband and I wanted to thank you for creating a system that allowed us to become business owners. We'd been saving money for 10 years, hoping to start our own company, but we never had the expertise or support network to make it happen." Carlos nodded enthusiastically. "The training program and ongoing support made the difference between success and failure for us. We knew we wanted to work hard, but we didn't know how to translate hard work into sustainable profits." "How has the business affected your family relationships?" I asked. "It's brought us closer together," Maria replied. "We're both working toward the same goals, and we're both contributing skills that matter. Carlos handles customer relationships and sales. I manage the financial and administrative systems, and we make all the major decisions together." That's exactly what we hoped would happen, I said. Business partnership can strengthen family relationships when it's structured properly and everyone feels like an equal contributor. Similar conversations continued throughout the conference weekend. I heard stories of teenage children learning about customer service by working part-time at family franchise locations. I met grandparents who were sharing decades of business wisdom with younger family members who'd taken on franchise ownership. I spoke with siblings who'd learned to appreciate each other's different strengths and work styles. But the conversation that affected me most deeply came from Jennifer and Michael Patterson, who owned our Maryland franchise location. Their story wasn't about business success. It was about healing. "Ms. Johnson," Jennifer said during a quiet moment on the resort's terrace, "I need to tell you something personal. My husband and I almost divorced 2 years ago. We'd been married for 15 years, but we'd grown apart because we never shared any common goals or projects." Michael continued the story. "When we decided to invest in the Johnson family automotive franchise, it wasn't really about cars or business. It was about finding something we could build together, something that would give us a reason to work as a team instead of living parallel lives. Has it helped your marriage? It saved our marriage," Jennifer said. "Not because business ownership is easy, but because working together toward shared goals has reminded us why we fell in love in the first place. We're partners again, not just roommates who happen to share expenses. The business has also given us something meaningful to pass on to our children," Michael added. "They're seeing their parents work together, solve problems together, and build something valuable together. That's a better legacy than anything we could have bought them." These conversations reinforced my understanding that the Johnson family automotive franchise program had become something larger than a business expansion strategy. It was a model for how families could use shared entrepreneurship to strengthen their relationships while achieving financial success. During the conference's closing dinner, Tyler stood up to address the franchise owners and their families. His confidence and natural leadership ability were evident, but so was the humility he'd developed through learning from his mistakes. 18 months ago, I nearly destroyed the family business that my father had spent 30 years building," Tyler began. "I made expansion decisions based on ego instead of analysis, and I almost lost everything because I was too proud to ask for help." The audience listened intently as Tyler shared his story of failure, learning, and redemption. What saved our business wasn't just better technology or improved systems. It was learning to work as a family team instead of competing with each other for recognition and control. The franchise program we're all part of is built on the idea that families can achieve extraordinary things when they combine their resources, skills, and commitment toward shared goals. But it only works when everyone feels valued and everyone's contributions are recognized. Tyler concluded his remarks by acknowledging my role in saving Johnson Family Automotive, but he did so in a way that emphasized collaboration rather than individual heroism. My sister Maya could have bought our company and run it however she wanted. Instead, she insisted on creating a partnership where everyone could contribute their best efforts and share in the success we achieved together. The applause was warm and sustained, but what meant more to me was seeing Tyler present himself as someone who'd learned from failure rather than someone who'd always been successful. That willingness to be vulnerable and authentic made him a more effective leader and a better brother. As the conference weekend concluded, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in the 18 months since I'd received that devastating text message about the house being sold. The crisis that had initially felt like betrayal had become the catalyst for healing relationships and building something more meaningful than I'd ever imagined possible. The drive back to New Jersey gave me time to think about the future direction of both TechFlow and Johnson Family Automotive. The TechFlow acquisition had been successful beyond our expectations, with Digital Solutions International providing resources that had accelerated our growth while preserving our company culture. Alex Rodriguez was thriving as Chief Operating officer, and the expanded development team was creating automotive software solutions that were setting new industry standards. Johnson Family Automotive had evolved from a struggling family business into a successful franchise organization that was helping other families achieve entrepreneurial success. Our original 3 locations in New Jersey were performing better than ever, and the franchise program had grown to 12 locations across 6 states. But more important than the business success was the transformation in our family relationships. Tyler and I had learned to be genuine partners who could disagree about strategy while maintaining respect for each other's judgment. Dad had found a meaningful role as franchise mentor and company historian, sharing his institutional knowledge with younger entrepreneurs while maintaining his dignity and sense of purpose. Mom had discovered marketing and communication talents that had been dormant during her years as a traditional homemaker. The house in Westfield had become the center of family life in ways it never had been during my childhood. Sunday dinners were now business strategy sessions where we shared ideas and solved problems collaboratively. Holiday celebrations included spouses, children, and close business associates who'd become extended family members. The garden that Grandma Rose had planted was thriving under professional maintenance, but it was also being enjoyed by grandchildren and family friends who understood its significance. That evening, I sat in the sunroom office reviewing quarterly reports from our franchise locations while listening to Tyler and Dad discuss expansion opportunities for the following year. Their conversation reflected the kind of strategic thinking that incorporated both optimism and caution, ambition and realism. "Maya," Tyler called from the dining room, "could you join us for a minute? We want to get your thoughts on something." I found them hunched over a map of the southeastern United States, discussing potential markets for franchise expansion. Their analysis was thorough and methodical, incorporating demographic data, competitive analysis, and operational considerations. "What do you think about the Charlotte market?" Tyler asked. "The demographics look favorable, and we've had 3 inquiries from potential franchise partners in that area." "Charlotte makes sense strategically," I replied. "It's a growing market with strong economic fundamentals, and it would give us a good geographic base for further expansion into the Carolinas." "What about timing?" Dad asked. "Are we ready to support additional franchise locations, or should we focus on optimizing our existing operations?" "I think we're ready for measured expansion. Our franchise support systems are working well, and we have the financial resources to provide adequate training and ongoing assistance." We spent the next hour developing a preliminary expansion plan that balanced growth opportunities with operational capacity. The conversation felt natural and productive, like we'd been business partners for decades instead of less than 2 years. "Tyler," I said as we were finishing our planning session, "I want to ask you something personal. Are you happy with how your life has turned out? I mean, not just the business success, but the overall direction of your career and relationships?" Tyler considered the question thoughtfully. "Maya, 2 years ago, I thought success meant being in charge, being recognized as the smart one, being the person everyone else had to listen to. I was miserable, but I thought that was just the price of ambition. And now? Now I understand that real success means building something meaningful with people you care about. I'm happier working as your partner than I ever was trying to be the sole leader of a failing business." "Tyler, I want you to know that I respect what you've learned and how you've changed. It takes courage to admit mistakes and even more courage to change fundamental patterns of behavior. Maya, I learned courage from watching how you handled our family crisis. You could have been vindictive, but you chose to be constructive. You could have taken control, but you chose to share power. That's the kind of leadership I want to emulate." As we cleaned up the maps and reports, Dad made an observation that captured something important about our family transformation. "You know, watching the 2 of you work together reminds me of your grandmother Rose. She always said that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared commitment to something larger than individual achievement. Dad, do you Think Grandma Rose would be proud of what we've built together? Maya, I think she'd be proud of who you've all become. Not just the business success, but the way you've learned to support each other and create opportunities for other families to succeed. That night, as I was preparing for bed in my childhood room, I received a text message from Alex Rodriguez in Chicago. TechFlow had been invited to present our automotive software platform at the National Auto Dealers Convention, the industry's most prestigious conference. Maya, this is huge, Alex's message read. Presenting at NADA would establish TechFlow as the definitive leader in automotive retail software. Are you interested? I stared at the message, thinking about the significance of the opportunity. The National Auto Dealers Convention was where I'd first learned about automotive industry software challenges, back when I was working promotional events for Johnson Automotive Solutions, and nobody thought I was paying attention to the technical discussions. Now TechFlow was being invited to present our solutions to thousands of automotive industry leaders, including many of the executives, who'd dismissed me as Tyler's little sister during those early promotional events. I texted back, absolutely interested. Let's discuss the presentation strategy tomorrow. But as I put my phone down, I realized that the vindication I'd once craved felt less important now than the satisfaction of building something meaningful with my family. The girl who'd been overlooked at industry events had grown into a woman whose company was reshaping the automotive retail industry. But more importantly, she'd learned that professional success was most fulfilling when it was connected to personal relationships and shared purpose. The following morning brought news that put the NADA presentation opportunity into perspective. Mom called me into the kitchen with obvious excitement, holding a letter from the New Jersey Small Business Administration. Maya, sweetheart, Johnson Family Automotive has been selected as the state's Family Business of the Year. They want to feature our story in their annual publication and present us with an award at their conference next month. I read through the award letter, which praised our business turnaround, franchise development program, and commitment to supporting other family businesses. But the part that meant the most to me was the final paragraph, which described Johnson Family Automotive as a model for how families can work together to achieve sustainable success, while strengthening rather than undermining their personal relationships. Mom, this recognition isn't just about business achievement. It's validation that we've created something worth emulating. Maya, when they interview us for the article, I want to make sure they understand that this transformation happened because you chose healing over hurt, collaboration over competition. Mom, this transformation happened because all of us chose to do better than we'd done before. I couldn't have saved the business without Tyler's operational knowledge and Dad's industry experience. Tyler couldn't have learned new leadership skills without being willing to admit his mistakes and ask for help. Dad couldn't have found a meaningful retirement role without being willing to share authority with his children. Tyler arrived while we were discussing the award, bringing coffee and pastries from the bakery in downtown Westfield. His routine of stopping for family breakfast before heading to the dealership had become one of my favorite parts of visiting the house. I heard about the Small Business Administration Award, Tyler said as he set down the coffee. Maya, this is incredible recognition for everything we've accomplished together. Tyler, we should use this recognition as an opportunity to promote the franchise program. If other families see what we've achieved, maybe they'll be inspired to explore entrepreneurship as a way to strengthen their relationships while building financial security. That's a great idea. We could use the award ceremony and publication to share specific strategies and systems that have worked for us. Dad joined us in the kitchen, having heard our conversation from his morning routine in the garden. What strategies do you think would be most valuable to share with other families? Honest communication about past hurts and current expectations, I said immediately. We couldn't work together effectively until we'd addressed years of misunderstandings and resentments. Structured decision-making processes that ensure everyone's voice is heard, Tyler added. We needed formal protocols to prevent old patterns of competition and control from undermining our partnership. Clear definition of roles and responsibilities based on actual skills and interests rather than traditional assumptions, Dad contributed. Maya's analytical abilities, Tyler's customer relationship skills, and my industry experience all needed to be recognized and utilized appropriately. We spent the next hour developing an outline for the Small Business Administration presentation that would share practical strategies while telling our personal story of transformation. The conversation felt like the kind of strategic planning that might happen at a consulting firm, but with the emotional investment that only comes from lived experience. Maya, Tyler said as we were finalizing our presentation outline, I want to make sure we're honest about how difficult this process was. Family business partnerships aren't just about good intentions and mutual respect. They require genuine commitment to changing established patterns of behavior. Tyler, you're right. We should acknowledge that healing family relationships requires ongoing effort, not just a single conversation or decision. And we should emphasize that business success alone isn't sufficient if family relationships remain damaged, Dad added. Sustainable success requires both financial achievement and personal satisfaction. The Small Business Administration conference was held 6 weeks later at a resort in Atlantic City, with over 300 family business owners in attendance. Our presentation was scheduled for the opening day, and the audience included everyone from second-generation retailers to fourth-generation manufacturers. I stood at the podium looking out at faces that reflected the same hopes and struggles that had characterized our family's journey. Many attendees were dealing with succession planning challenges, sibling rivalries, or intergenerational conflicts that were affecting both business performance and family relationships. 18 months ago, I began. Johnson Family Automotive was facing bankruptcy, and our family relationships were characterized by competition, resentment, and mutual disappointment. Today, we're operating a successful franchise program that's helping other families achieve entrepreneurial success, while our personal relationships are stronger than they've been since childhood. I shared our story chronologically, from the college fund betrayal through the house purchase revelation to the business turnaround and franchise development. But I focused most of my presentation on the specific strategies and systems that had enabled our transformation. The first requirement for successful family business partnership is honest acknowledgement of past hurts and current dynamics. We couldn't work together effectively until we'd addressed years of misunderstandings, resentments, and unequal treatment. The second requirement is structured decision-making processes that ensure everyone's expertise is utilized and everyone's voice is heard. We needed formal protocols to prevent old patterns of competition and control from undermining our partnership. The third requirement is clear definition of roles and responsibilities based on actual skills and interests rather than traditional assumptions or birth order. Success required recognizing and utilizing everyone's contributions appropriately. After my presentation, Tyler and Dad joined me on stage for a panel discussion about implementation challenges and ongoing relationship management. The questions from the audience were thoughtful and practical, reflecting genuine interest in applying our strategies to their own family business situations. Mr. Johnson, one audience member asked Tyler, how did you overcome the ego challenges of accepting your sister's leadership in areas where you'd previously considered yourself the expert? Tyler's answer was characteristically honest and self-aware. I had to face the reality that my ego was more important to me than my family's success, and that wasn't sustainable. Learning to ask for help and acknowledge other people's expertise was difficult, but it was also liberating. Ms. Johnson, another attendee, asked me, how do you balance family loyalty with business accountability when family members aren't performing at acceptable levels? We've learned to separate relationship issues from performance issues, I replied. We can love each other unconditionally while still maintaining professional standards and expectations. but that requires clear communication about both personal and business boundaries. The conference concluded with a networking session where dozens of family business owners approached us to discuss specific challenges and opportunities. Many of their stories reminded me of our own journey, and several expressed interest in exploring franchise opportunities that would allow them to work with family members while leveraging proven systems and support structures. "Maya," said Patricia Chen, who owned a restaurant chain with her husband and 3 adult children, "your presentation has given me hope that we can resolve some long-standing family conflicts that have been affecting our business performance. Would you be willing to consult with us about implementing some of your strategies?" "Patricia, I'd be happy to discuss your situation, but the most important thing to understand is that meaningful change requires commitment from everyone involved. One person can't fix family business dynamics alone. All 5 family members are ready to do whatever it takes to improve our relationships and our business results. We're just not sure where to start. Start with honest conversations about past hurts and current expectations. Create structured opportunities for everyone to share their perspectives without interruption or immediate response. Focus on understanding each other's viewpoints before trying to solve specific problems." Similar conversations continued throughout the networking session, and I found myself energized by the opportunity to share strategies that could help other families avoid the pain and conflict that had characterized our journey for so many years. During the drive back to New Jersey, Tyler and I discussed the possibility of developing a formal consulting practice to help other family businesses implement the strategies we'd discovered. "Maya, I think there's genuine demand for the kind of structured approach we've developed. Most family business consultants focus on succession planning or operational efficiency, but not many address the relationship dynamics that determine whether families can work together successfully. Tyler, I'm interested in the consulting concept, but I want to make sure we're not promising more than we can deliver. Our transformation was successful, but it was also specific to our family's particular circumstances and personalities. What if we partnered with family business therapists and organizational development specialists to create a comprehensive support system? We could provide the practical business strategies while they handle the deeper psychological and communication issues." "That's an interesting idea. We could offer intensive retreats where families work through relationship issues while developing business partnership structures." We spent the remainder of the drive developing a preliminary concept for Johnson Family Business Consulting, a practice that would help other families navigate the intersection of personal relationships and professional collaboration. "Maya, if we develop this consulting practice, I think it should be separate from Johnson Family Automotive. Both businesses deserve focused attention, and we don't want to dilute our effectiveness by trying to manage too many different initiatives." "I agree, but I also think the consulting practice should be a true partnership between us, not just another opportunity for me to lead while you follow. Maya, I want to be an equal partner in everything we build together. I've learned that shared leadership produces better results than individual authority." The following weeks brought rapid development of the family business consulting concept. We engaged professionals to help with market research, service design, and organizational structure. We developed assessment tools, workshop curricula, and ongoing support systems. We created partnership agreements that ensured equal decision-making, authority and profit sharing, but the most important development was the recognition that we were building something that could make a meaningful difference in other families' lives while strengthening our own partnership. "Tyler," I said during one of our planning sessions, "I think we should pilot the consulting practice with 3 families before we launch it officially. That will help us refine our approach and develop case studies that demonstrate our effectiveness." "That makes sense. Do you have any families in mind for the pilot program?" Patricia Chen from the conference expressed serious interest. We've also received inquiries from 2 of our franchise owners who want help resolving conflicts with family members who aren't directly involved in the business. "Maya, I want to make sure we're prepared for the possibility that some families won't be able to achieve the kind of transformation we experienced. Not every family has the fundamental love and respect that made our healing possible. Tyler, you're right. We need to be realistic about our limitations and honest about the prerequisites for successful family business partnerships. What do you think those prerequisites are? Genuine love and concern for each other's well-being, even when relationships are strained. Willingness to acknowledge past mistakes and change established patterns of behavior. Shared commitment to something larger than individual recognition or advantage. And probably most importantly, the maturity to separate business decisions from personal validation. 6 months later, Johnson Family Business Consulting was officially launched with a client base of 12 families and a waiting list of over 30 potential clients. Our approach combined practical business strategy with relationship development, and our success rate exceeded our most optimistic projections. But the moment that defined the true significance of our family transformation came during a quiet, Sunday dinner at the house in Westfield. Tyler had brought Jessica, who was now working full-time as Johnson Family Automotive's marketing director. Dad was sharing stories about the early days of the automotive business. Mom was planning the menu for our upcoming Thanksgiving celebration, which would include Alex Rodriguez and his family, Jennifer Chen and her partner, and several franchise owners who'd become close family friends. Maya, Mom said, as we were clearing the dinner dishes, I need to tell you something that I've been thinking about for months. What's on your mind, Mom? When you bought this house, I thought it was about vindication and proving us wrong. But now I understand that it was about preservation and making sure we didn't lose something irreplaceable. Mom, the house represents the best parts of my childhood and the only unconditional love I experienced during those years. I couldn't let strangers destroy what Grandma Rose had created. But you also couldn't let your family destroy what we had the potential to create together. I wanted to believe that we could do better than we'd done before, even when there wasn't much evidence to support that hope. Maya, sweetheart, you saved more than our business and our house. You saved our family. That evening, as I was walking through Grandma Rose's garden in the twilight, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The girl who'd been told she wasn't worth a real college education had grown into a woman who owned multiple successful businesses and was helping other families achieve their entrepreneurial dreams. But more importantly, the daughter who'd felt excluded and undervalued had become the catalyst for healing relationships and creating opportunities for genuine partnership and mutual support. The house that had once represented childhood disappointment was now the center of adult collaboration and shared purpose. The family that had once made me feel invisible now saw me clearly and celebrated my contributions. The brother who'd been my competitor was now my closest business partner and trusted advisor. As I stood among the roses that Grandma Rose had planted decades earlier, I realized that this wasn't just a story about business success or personal vindication. It was a story about the possibility of redemption, the power of forgiveness, and the extraordinary things that become possible when people choose healing over hurt. The best revenge isn't proving other people wrong. It's creating a life so meaningful that their original opinions become irrelevant. And sometimes, if you're very fortunate, the people who hurt you become the people who help you build something extraordinary. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.